Power, secrecy, control. For 37 years, one man held absolute authority over 90 million people. He commanded armies, toppled presidents, and shaped wars across an entire region. And yet, almost nobody in the West truly knows his name. His official portrait hangs in every government building in Iran. His word overrides every law, every court, every election. And according to investigators, he quietly accumulated a financial empire worth between $95 billion and $200 billion, while telling his people he lived on bread and raisins. He was a poet, a chess player, a revolutionary, and depending on who you ask, either a divinely guided holy man or one of the most ruthless operators in modern history. This is the black truth of Ali Khamenei. The story starts in a place you'd never expect, not in the corridors of power, but in a single room. Ali Hosseini Khamenei was born on April 19, 1939, in Mashhad, Iran. Not a grand city of palaces, but a holy city home to the Imam Reza Shrine, one of the most sacred sites in all of Shia Islam. His father was a cleric. His house was 65 square meters, one room and a gloomy basement. When his father received visitors, the family retreated underground. And some nights, there was nothing to eat but bread and raisins. This detail matters, because Khamenei would repeat it for the rest of his life. In speeches, in interviews, in carefully crafted public image, the man with $200 billion in his grip, always reminding you of the raisins. By the age of 11, he was already wearing clerical robes to school. His classmates mocked him for it, but he didn't care. Here is your first strange detail about Khamenei. His mother was from Yazd, a city famous in Iranian folklore for mysticism and secretive religious orders. His father's side was Azerbaijani Turkic, a minority within the Shia world. He was, from birth, an outsider in the very establishment he would one day rule. He studied theology in Mashhad, then briefly in Najaf in Iraq, the ancient heartland of Shia scholarship. But his father called him home. And so instead of becoming a great religious scholar, he became something else entirely, a political operator. By 1962, the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was pushing forward his so-called White Revolution, modernization, land reform, women's rights. To the Shah, it was progress. To the clerics, it was a direct assault on their power. And a young, largely unknown cleric in Qom began whispering against it. His name was Ruhollah Khomeini. Khamenei was sent to deliver messages between Khomeini and senior clerics, a courier of revolution. And that connection would change everything. He was arrested 6 times by the Shah's brutal secret police, Savak, exiled, imprisoned, released, exiled again. Most men would have stopped. Khamenei got more dangerous. By 1979, as the revolution swept through Iran and the Shah fled the country, Khamenei re-emerged, and Khomeini placed him at the heart of the new Revolutionary Council, Deputy Defense Minister, head of the Revolutionary Guards, Tehran's Friday prayer leader, giving weekly sermons to hundreds of thousands of people. In less than 2 years, a man who grew up hiding in a basement was now one of the most powerful voices in the Islamic Republic. But then, someone tried to kill him. June 27, 1981. Abu Zar Mosque, Tehran. Khamenei is at the pulpit, answering questions from the crowd. A young man places a tape recorder on the desk in front of him. Presses play. A minute later, a deafening whistle. Then the device explodes. The blast tears through his right arm, his vocal cords, his lungs. He is hospitalized for months. His right arm is permanently paralyzed. Later, a message is found written inside the shattered recorder, a gift from the Furqan group to the Islamic Republic. He survives, and here is where the story takes a turn that his supporters will use for the next 44 years. His survival is declared a miracle, a sign of divine protection. The state media calls him untouchable, chosen by God to lead. Just months after the bombing, still recovering from his injuries, Khamenei runs for president of Iran. He wins with 95% of the vote. Now, in any country in the world, you might ask, How does a man who just had his arm blown off, whose voice was permanently damaged, win an election by 95%? The official answer, the people loved him. The unofficial answer, he was the only candidate Khomeini approved. The paralyzed arm would become one of the most recognizable symbols in the Middle East. Always kept slightly bent, always tucked beneath his robe in certain photographs. A constant reminder I survived. I was chosen. I cannot be stopped. Khomeini died in June 1989, and what happened next is one of the most remarkable power transfers in modern history. Khamenei was not a grand ayatollah. He wasn't even a full ayatollah yet. He was a mid-ranking cleric who had spent most of his career as a politician, not a religious scholar. Under the Iranian constitution, he did not qualify for the role of supreme leader. So they changed the constitution, overnight. Before Khomeini was even buried, they rewrote the rules to fit the man. Iran's most powerful political operator at the time, Ali Akbar Rafsanjani, championed Khamenei for the job. His calculation? That Khamenei would be weak, controllable, a puppet. It was the greatest miscalculation in the history of the Islamic Republic. Khamenei spent the next 3 decades methodically eliminating every rival, co-opting every institution, and quietly building an empire so vast that even those inside the regime couldn't fully map it. Every president who served under him, from reformers to hardliners, left office discredited. Every man who thought he controlled Khamenei eventually ended up in prison, in exile, or dead. He had outlasted them all. Now here is where the story gets truly dark. In 2013, Reuters published the results of a 6-month investigation. What they found shocked the world, or at least the part of the world paying attention. Khamenei controlled a secret financial conglomerate called Setad, formerly the headquarters for executing the Order of the Imam. On paper, it was a charity, set up to help the poor and war veterans after the revolution. In reality, Reuters estimated its assets at approximately $95 billion. The US Embassy in Baghdad later suggested the true figure could be closer to $200 billion. Former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called it Khamenei's personal off-the-books hedge fund. How did Setad build this empire? By seizing property, systematically, legally using Iran's own courts, properties belonging to ordinary Iranians, religious minorities, Baha'is, business people, expatriates. Setad would claim the properties were abandoned. Iranian courts would hand them over. Setad would sell them or develop them, and the money would flow upward. To put this in perspective, at its peak, Setad's assets were 40% larger than Iran's entire annual oil exports. Meanwhile, annual inflation in Iran was running above 40%. Bread prices tripled, fuel prices doubled. Ordinary Iranians lined up for hours to buy basic food, and here is the detail that makes this so extraordinary. The entire time, Khamenei gave speeches condemning greed, materialism, and the corrupt accumulation of wealth. The man who controlled a $200 billion empire preached austerity. And the gap between the sermon and the secret, that is the black truth at the center of this story. But if you think the wealth is the whole story, you're not looking closely enough. Consider this. Khamenei spent 37 years building what he called the Axis of Resistance, a network of proxy forces stretching from Tehran to Beirut, to Baghdad, to Yemen to Gaza. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, all funded, all armed, all answering, directly or indirectly, to him. Western intelligence agencies have spent billions trying to understand how this network operates. Most of them will tell you privately they still don't fully know. Here is the conspiracy theory that refuses to go away. Why did Khamenei, a man who survived a bomb, who had every reason to fear assassination, operate for 37 years without ever being successfully targeted? Some analysts point to the sheer scale of his intelligence apparatus. Others point to the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, who by some estimates controlled 30–40% of Iran's entire economy and whose loyalty to Khamenei was absolute. But others point to something stranger. They note that on several occasions, in 2019, in 2022, And again in 2025, US and Israeli intelligence reportedly had targeting windows on Khamenei. And each time, for reasons that were never fully explained, the operation was called off. Was he protected by calculated geopolitics? Or something more? His supporters always had a simple answer. God does not allow the death of his chosen one, and for 37 years, remarkably, they appeared to be right. On February 28, 2026, in the holy month of Ramadan, that answer finally changed. A coordinated US-Israeli strike hit Tehran. Within hours, Iranian state television confirmed what the world could barely believe. Ali Khamenei, the man who had survived the Shah's prisons, a bomb planted beside him at a mosque, and 37 years of geopolitical hostility, was dead at 86. Iranian state TV announced he had achieved his long-cherished wish of martyrdom. Instantly, the question the entire Middle East had been whispering for years became the loudest question in the room. What happens now? His son Mojtaba, long the shadow behind the throne, reportedly worth $3 billion in personal assets, with deep ties to the IRGC, was immediately named as a possible successor. But Mojtaba, like his father once did, doesn't hold the formal religious qualifications. And just as they rewrote the constitution for the father, the question of whether they'd do it again for the son hung over Tehran like smoke. The $95 billion empire, the proxy network, the paralyzed arm, the 37 years, all of it, now without a guardian. Whatever your verdict on Ali Khamenei, whether you see a visionary who genuinely believed he was defending Islam from the forces of empire, or a ruthless operator who used religion as the perfect mask for raw, accumulated power, one thing is undeniable. The Islamic Republic was, in many ways, his personal creation. And the world is about to find out what it looks like without him.